going to come down to the floor and we're going to take what we call hook-lying position, like so. And before we start moving our hips or doing anything with our hips, I want you just to kind of tune into how your body feels whilst you're in this position. So you've got knees bent and feet flat on the floor. Your palms are facing up. If you're lying here and you're noticing that, I can feel that this is happening to me, so I am going to get a cushion to put under my head. But if you're laying here and you feel like the bottom of your rib cage at the back is kind of lifting up and flaring towards the ceiling, so actually if I pull up my top, you might be able to see here how my rib cage is kind of lifting upwards. I feel a little bit tense in my mid-back. I want you to consider putting a cushion or putting two cushions underneath your head, because having the elevation through your head is going to help you stay grounded through your rib cage, which is going to give you better access to the hip muscles that we want to wake up today. The other thing to look out for is if you feel like your shoulders are really rounding up and away from the floor, and or your head is tilting backwards like this, so you've got a bit of a crick in your neck, that's another sign that you need to have a pillow underneath your head. So if this is the first time you're doing this routine, I thoroughly recommend that you get your cushion, pop it under your head, and give it a go with that to start with, because you don't know how good it's going to feel until you try it with the cushion. So it's going to help relax off your thoracic spine and shoulders more easily. There's no kind of good that comes from your body just tensing up and not being able to let go. So now that I've put the pillow under my head, I can feel how my lower rib cage is just grounded onto the floor without me having to do anything to kind of put it there. Palms are facing up. And before we get started with our 5 exercises today, I want you to really come back to your breath. So it might be worth just spending a couple of minutes in this position, breathing in and out of your nose, sending the breath into your diaphragm. So we want to see your belly expanding and falling through your breath, rather than it being that it's your chest heaving up and down, or your shoulders moving up and down, or really feeling like all of your breath is kind of stuck up here. We're using our nose to breathe deeply into our lower belly, and this is going to help calm our nervous system down, as well as use the muscles of respiration for what they are actually designed to do, breathing. The next thing that you're going to consider, just while you're having a little lay down here and settling in and focusing on the breath, is we are really trying to keep the kneecaps in alignment with the hips, the ankles in alignment with the knees, and the toes in alignment with the ankles. So one of the biggest things that I see when people get into this position is either that their knees hang out a little bit wide or their knees droop in together. That's the kind of the first thing. So we're really making sure that the direction of the kneecap marries up with the hip joints as much as possible. But the next thing you have to be really wary of is what your feet are doing. So most people will have their feet wider than their knees, and they'll have their toes wider than their ankles. So I want you to think about your toes and your ankles as being like different entities. So you're going to walk your feet in, and this, you can have someone watch you maybe, or you can film yourself the first few times that you do this, or in a mirror, so that you're a bit more cognizant of where your feet are. But you're trying to keep your ankles in alignment with your knees, and not just the ankles in alignment with your knees. You're thinking about the toes. So here, my ankles, knees and hips are in alignment, but the toes is splaying off out to the side. So I'm rotating my feet in around the ankle and placing the balls of the feet back down on the floor. We are trying our absolute utmost to keep the middle of the toes, the middle of the ankles, the middle of the knees, and the middle of the hips in alignment throughout. Okay, so let's move on to our first hip exercise. We're going to roll our pelvis forwards into what we call an anteriorly rotated position. So the pelvis rolls forwards, which creates a little bit of an arch in the lower back. Creating an arch in the lower back is occurring through the pelvis moving forwards, not the rib cage flaring up. So sometimes when I ask people to roll their pelvis forwards, what they actually do is kind of puff their rib cage upwards. The rib cage stays kind of still and grounded, the pelvis rocks forward like this. You're keeping that pelvis in that rocked forward position. The palms are facing up. What we're going to do with our left foot, but I'm going to demonstrate this on my right foot just so that the camera can capture it clearly, is we're going to keep the toes on the floor and we're going to keep the toes relaxed. The ball of the foot stays down, but we elevate the ankle off the floor as much as we can like this. But you are still trying to keep your knee, your ankle and your toes all in alignment with the hip. So you're not going up really, really high if that means that your knee kind of falls out or fall in. You might notice that just through doing this movement, you get a cramp or work happening through your calf or through your foot. That's a good thing. It just tells you that your foot and your calf are waking up differently. So I'm going to be doing this on my left foot to start with. It's going to stay in this position throughout. I've still got to try and keep that tracking through the leg with the alignment, and I'm still keeping my pelvis driving forwards, okay? So I'm going to put that right foot down, and I'm now lifting my left foot, which is going to stay in that position throughout the next 20 reps that we're going to do. The pelvis drives forward, upper body stays completely relaxed. So the palms, the arms, the shoulders, the breath, the jaw, the neck are all relaxed. We're keeping that steady breathing going through our belly, and we are not using our abdominals for the next thing that we're going to do. So you may notice that your belly really wants to grip on. That is a compensation. We want this exercise to be felt deeply in the hip flexor here. So you might notice that it's your belly. You might notice that it's your quads. That's quite common. And it shouldn't be either of those things, but as you get more and more into the exercise, you'll hopefully start noticing it focusing more where the hip meets the pelvis. So pelvis stays tilted forward, slight arch in lower back, the pelvis stays still throughout, upper body including the belly stays relaxed, focusing on that breath, and we are going to do tiny lifts through the knee up and down like this. So I'm not taking the knee as far as I can towards my chest, because if I do that, I'm going to be quite likely to rock my pelvis down. We're literally just doing baby movements because we're trying to isolate a muscle. There are no prizes to be won here through you getting a crazy range of movement if that means that you're then compensating. So we're literally just lifting the knee up and down, 2 or 3 inches, the pelvis stays driving forward, upper body relaxed, breathing is nice and steady, and we're remembering that lift through the left ankle as we do it. You're not kicking the foot forwards, you're lifting the knee up and down like this. So I like to say, imagine that there's a fishing line pulling your knee out of the water. Remember to drive forwards through the pelvis, and hopefully if you're doing things correctly and you listen to all the cues, at some point you'll notice your hip switch on, but it might take quite a few reps before that happens. So upper body stays relaxed, keep the left ankle lifted, pelvis driving forwards, belly relaxed. Off we go, 20 reps on this right leg, trying to keep both knees tracking in alignment with the hip. Off we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And we'll put that leg down. So we're going to swap sides. So making sure that our feet haven't lost their position. So we're really considering the middle of our toes, ankles, knees and hips in alignment, rocking the pelvis forwards, but keeping the rib cage kind of down. We're not puffing the rib cage up because that might make us tense in our mid to lower back. This time, I'm lifting up my right ankle and keeping it there. I'm not pointing my toes. The toes are flat on the floor and the pivot point is occurring around the big toe joint. We're going to try and keep the right knee, right ankle, right toes in alignment with the hip. And we're going to do that same motion on the left-hand side that we did before. We're lifting the knee up and down a couple of inches. We're not kicking the foot forwards. Upper body stays as relaxed as it can do, but you might notice how your upper body wants to tense up and hold on as you're trying to move your hips. And that's teaching you that your upper body compensates for a lack of function at your hips. So you're just moving through this nice and slowly. And if you feel yourself tensing up or losing your breath, back out of the exercise a little bit, go a little bit more slowly, aim for a smaller range of movement and just be a little bit more mindful. Okay, 20 on the left-hand side, off we go. And we're noting in our head differences from side to side as well. So off we go, 1, 2, because I know that I am significantly weaker through my left hip than I am my right hip. So it takes a lot longer for me to feel this kind of work happening in my left hip flexor. 6, 7, 8. Calm, steady breath, relaxing the hands and the jaw and the upper body and the belly. 11, 12. Make sure the foot touches the floor in between each rep. So you're not hovering the foot off the floor, it's touching the floor in between. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Good job. So we're going to do another set of 20 on each side before we move on to the next exercise. Pelvis tilts forwards, upper body relaxed, keeping the toes down on that left foot. We're lifting the left heel, trying to keep that left leg steady, tracking us all the way from the toe to the hip, watching that the knee doesn't fall in or out. We're moving our right knee up and down. The foot follows, the foot is not kicking up. 3. Making sure the foot touches the ground in between and trying to relax off any tension that we might feel arising through our shoulders and our head. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Taking breaks whenever you need. So you might notice that you're getting really tired in your hips, or they might be cramping, or your calf might be cramping. And that's fine, just take a break. You don't have to battle through just because I'm doing something. 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then settling back down again, tilting pelvis forwards, upper body relaxing, right ankle lifts up, toes on the floor, everything tracking in a straight line. 20 on that left leg, off we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice and slowly. The slower you do things, the better you'll do them. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Cool. So what we did there was our Hooklying isolated hip flexor lifts. So we isolated our primary hip flexors, which you may have heard of before, called the psoas muscle or the iliopsoas, but they should be feeling a nice old burn in the front of the hips there if they were switching on correctly. And if you weren't feeling it there,